Whitney Sewell, I'm so pumped up to talk to you. Welcome to the Capital Raisers Show, man. How are you doing today?
I am doing amazing, Ruben. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. I'm super pumped up. I've seen you at a couple places. I ran into you at the Jake and Gino event out in Orlando earlier. Actually, maybe it was last year. And then most recently at Beck 20. So that was really cool. I love seeing you, man. You always have a really positive, humble energy about you. Welcome to the show, man. I'm going to talk about all kinds of stuff. I think I want to dive into some new areas, maybe a little bit about this concept that people are familiar with about getting out of the rat race. I know that you adopt children. I commend you for that. Definitely want to talk to you about maybe some of the things that you are teaching your kids. I definitely like to contemplate, when I have kids, and maybe we'll adopt too, so we can go down that road. But what kinds of stuff I want to put into their mind at a young age so they can develop differently than a lot of people do. All about podcasting. And I'm very curious about your business model. I know that you're a multifamily syndicator. Just about everybody that comes on this show is. Tell us a little bit about, and I heard somebody told me that you were a federal agent. Is that true?
That is true, but I can't tell anybody that.
Is that misconceived? Are you like an FBI guy, or is it? So I saw you, maybe it's more of a Department of Transportation. You have a background as a police officer, if I saw correctly.
That's right.
And you were in the military too?
Yeah, that's right.
All right,
Yep.
cool.
Spent a year overseas, was with Kentucky State Police, became a federal agent. So a lot of everybody thinks the FBI, those things, but a lot of agencies have special agents that do different things or investigations and things like that. So that's what I do it is the U.S. Department of Transportation, but I'm a special agent for them, or have been for a number of years. But yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. I want to know about your time in the military. I have so many questions for you. But before we get started, why don't you tell a little bit, because I don't do a bio, tell the audience a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, would love to share just a little bit so they can get to know me, and I think that'll help with some of the conversation that we have as well. And I really look forward to us talking about what you're talking about kids and what we're sharing with our kids. I've got a good book for that as well.
Nice.
And so anyway, a little about me. Back in March of 2001, and that month is important because I decided to join the military in that month. And if you remember back in 2001 in March, everything was just great, right? Like the country just seemed amazing, for the most part anyway. We had no idea that just in a few months our nation was going to be at war. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that in, a short period of time that I'd be spending a year of my life in Iraq, toting around a machine gun, praying every day that I'd get to go home. And, unfortunately, every man in my squad didn't make it home. I'm very grateful and blessed to be standing here today, and so grateful. I mean, it gives me chills just thinking about it.
It gives me chills.
I'm just so grateful. Anyway, just the Lord really did some amazing stuff there and just protected me and has every day since, no doubt about it. But one thing the military taught me, though, was to have that, what I like to say is a never give up mentality. And, that really helped me to change my mindset. And really started in boot camp, before I ever went overseas. But just the training, most people have never been as tired as they get you in boot camp and push you through and make you keep pushing, because if you're going into battle, you need to know how far you can push yourself. You need to already have that mindset that I can do it, that I'm not going to give up just because I stumped my toe. I mean, it's just not an option to give up, So all that, when I came home from overseas, I tried to figure out what am I going to do, and law enforcement was a great segue. I love the structure and the uniform, just the discipline. And so out of 1,200 applicants, there were only 5 positions with Kentucky State Police, and I was blessed with one of those. And so thankfully, I loved working the road, but due to a lack of income, that pushed me into real estate. Okay. And at the time, I was just trying to supplement my income. I had no idea, what was possible and where we would be at today. It was 2009. But I could also tell that what we were doing there, or as far as, or what my career with law enforcement just wasn't what was best for my family. I was just married, and we just passed each other the first whole year of marriage in the hallway.
Oh,
So that pushed us more into real estate, but also, pushed me into finding a different career path, which is what led me to become a federal agent. And that's why we moved to Virginia, where we still live now. But ultimately through that process, I mean, many other things. I had another business. I was actually a professional horse trainer as well. And most people in this industry have
I
no
did not know
idea, but
that.
I actually built a pretty good brand there, and people knew me all over the country, did clinics and all over the place, and sold horses for more money than I ever imagined. But it took me training till midnight most nights in the arena, most weekends, while still working full time. And it finally hit me. Well, actually, one weekend, let's get into our other conversation you and I were having. One fall, my wife and our family, we went on a little vacation. We were on the beach. I'll never forget. We were just praying and just really asking the Lord for wisdom and how to move forward, because it was just hitting me that no matter how good and how well known I became as a professional horse trainer, it was just a passion of mine to ride horses since I was little, and it became really easy, honestly. I mean, the horses, I'm standing up in the saddle, popping whips in both hands. They're laying down with nothing on them, and I'm standing on top of them, popping whips. I mean, just crazy stuff, Never imagined being able to do those things. If you can imagine the time it took that I invested to be able to do that, and just the value of that horse, then I paint a little pitch there to say, when we were on that beach, we decided that was never going to be passive, and that for me to pursue that, for us to push the real estate business, I had to just cut all that off. And so we sold the farm. We sold everything related to that business and just jumped into, we already had some portfolio of real estate, but small multis and single family up to like a 15 unit. But at that time we're like, nope, this is always going to be a distraction for the time being. And we just cut it all off. We were also pursuing our third adoption. We wanted to be able to be focused on that and obviously be able to afford it financially because it's so expensive. So we sold our farm and everything so I could just be completely committed to the real estate business. And that's, we jumped in then. And obviously that's where the daily podcast, we've done over 550 interviews now. We have a business partner in Denver. We've got over 500 units, over $60 million under management. We're growing and great things are happening. And obviously, we have a big why and a big mission behind what we're doing as well, which I know you mentioned. But that's a little about me. I'm happy to elaborate on anything.
Oh, that's phenomenal. I love it.
Like to hear.
That's a great background. I didn't know some of the stuff. One of the brokers that I used to buy real estate from here in town back during the crash, she was a thoroughbred. She used to sell thoroughbreds, and she got into real estate, and she's got a big brokerage. I think she was one of the top agents. Let me go into that. What is your favorite memory? I'm curious about, with a horse, any particular thing that stands out. You mentioned you had a farm.
We did. We had a farm, and I was training a lot of other people's horses, but mostly training a friend of mine who did all the videography. We had professional videos of me doing all these tricks and all kinds of crazy stuff. He would call it horse flipping, which we laughed about, because I was in the real estate business as well. But that's ultimately what I would do. I had a student who was taking horsemanship lessons. She, like my bird dog, she would find horses, that we would go and purchase, and then I would keep them 6 months to a year and train them and then sell them, as a good horse. A great memory. I tell you what, I've had numerous great horses, but I had one. It's hard to pick, but I had one that, or many that I've done lots and lots of tricks with. But even as my oldest son, he's almost 7, but when he was 2 years old, this horse, I could ask him to lay down what we call liberty, meaning I did this with numerous horses, but with no halter, no bridle, nothing on him. He could bow, he could sit up like a dog, and did this with numerous horses. However, this one, he could lay down. I could stand on him and pop whips and throw tarps over him and all this stuff, and he'd just lay there, But I could also, of course, my 2-year-old at the time, he was wanting to do what Dad's doing, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I set him up on this horse is still laying on its side, and I can still picture this. We have a picture of it, but my 2-year-old standing up on this horse's hips while he's laying down on his side. The horse is completely laying down, and he's shaking a whip like he's popping a bull whip, and that horse is just laying there. But I would also say, I would like to add that I used to give some lessons, or this young lady would come out that had cerebral palsy, and it gives me chills thinking about it. But the horse, she could ask it, or I was ultimately asking it, but she thought she was asking the horse to do tricks. And it was just the most amazing thing for this horse to lay down for her and her to get to sit on this big animal as it's laying down on the ground with nothing on it. And it's just an amazing moment when she gets to experience something like that, But anyway.
Wow. No, I love it. I love stories about people. I think it helps people connect, when they hear stories versus, it's all business, business, business. It helps people connect with you. And you're a very genuine human being. And I want the audience to know you a little bit deeper than they have previously. to having, because I think a lot of people know you and know your story, know what you do, know that you got the longest, not the longest running, but one of the longest running
The
daily
second longest
podcasts.
running.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, let's dive into that. So I saw on your website that one of your advisors is Joe Fairless. Did you do coaching with him?
I did. He's become a great friend and mentor over numerous years now. Yeah, great guy.
Do you mind if I pick your brain about what that program is like? What is it like being coached by Joe Fairless?
That's funny. Yeah, no, I don't mind a bit. Fire away.
I've had a lot of people who have used him as a mentor, and he's, I think, one of the biggest figures in the industry. What is the process like when you go through? What does he have you start doing? I mean, is it literally from zero to full-blown syndicator? What is the process that he takes you through? Is it more mindset or is it more strategy?
I would say, yeah, that's a great question. And because while I say, I get questions every week about what mentor should I choose, or how is this one, or how is that one? Because I've come to know most of them now personally and know lots of people in their programs, so we get that question often. But with Joe, I would back up and say, I did a lot of research about coaches before I hired somebody.
Yeah.
It's a big investment.
I like that.
And it was a ton of money for me, especially then. And we were also going through an adoption process, all that expense, but I knew this was critical, component to making this successful. And so I did lots of research. I traveled to different conferences to listen to mentors speak before I signed up with somebody, and I would say there was numerous guys who I was strongly considering, who I know other groups who've had success, but just hearing the individual speak from stage or getting to talk to them a little bit in person, I just knew it wasn't a good fit. I mean, there were just different things, it just felt like this is not for me, this is not, we don't have an alignment here of just how we feel about these things. And so when I did a little research about Joe, we just heard nothing but amazing things, talked to him on the phone, still just felt really good. He seemed so genuine at the time. And I've come to find out, I mean, it's true. And just a very genuine guy, really cares about other people being successful. What I really like, though, and I would encourage people to think about, is when you're signing up for, everybody calls these people like a big guru, right? But I would say, I loved that I still had personal access to Joe. Okay. There's very few coaches or mentors that still offer that and will still allow you to communicate and reach out to them directly. I can call Joe, text, email at any time. He's the most responsive person that I've ever met probably in my life, as far as like I could send him an email now and I bet he's back to me within 10 minutes. It's incredible how organized he is on that side. I've learned a lot from him, as far as that goes. But initially, one of the first things he's going to do with you is get your mind right. Like help broaden your horizons a little bit mentally, but really set some goals too. Like one of the first calls you're going to have with him is like, let's talk about like, where are we trying to go here? He loves reverse engineering, process. So where are we trying to go? How are we going to get there? Okay, well, what's, how many steps are in between here and there? What has to happen? And really breaking that down. And that's what he's really good at. But then he's going to take you through some marketing stuff. He's going to take you through the acquisition and, or actually thinking about markets and thinking about acquisitions and how to find a property and working with a broker and working with investors. And, really the whole deal to some extent. But I still say, most of that he puts out for free in his book. Well, I'll say for free. It's $50, I think. And it's one of the best $50 you'll spend. If
I have that book.
No doubt about it. I mean, that's majority of his program. Okay. However, you don't get him. You don't get that communication. And while our conversation over the last few years, obviously when you're first starting to where I'm at now, our conversations have changed a lot, right? And are just a friendship now, right? It's a very different conversation, very different relationship. But just last week, we were talking just about everything that's happening right now, what he's doing at his properties, what I'm doing at mine, and just different things that we're seeing, strategizing a little bit more. But there's still so many things that like I'm just like, okay, Joe, well, this is something that's going on right now. Like, what do you think? And just having somebody outside looking in is so valuable. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times that's happened. I can schedule calls with him at any time or just call him, either one. But, and sometimes I don't even have anything to talk about, but I still get value, just me and him just talking about different things, because different things comes up. He asks some question, makes me think about something differently. And then it like helps me to move on to the next thing, or grow in some way or whatever. It's been crucial. But ultimately, that one-on-one is the value that you're getting.
I love it. I love it. Okay, cool. So I'm curious. Before we go into multifamily syndication, I want to hear all about your business model and maybe do some case studies on some of the deals you've done. But I'm curious more about if you could walk us through maybe a lesson that shaped you into the person that you are today. Anything stand out in regards to like a specific moment in your life where you pivoted completely? Was it in the military? Was it before that? Was there anything in your early part of your life that helped change the direction of where you're going?
I've had so many pivots.
That's good.
In a good way, I think. The biggest is coming to know Jesus Christ as my Savior. I mean, that's my biggest pivot and most important by far, without a doubt, most important. So, and anything after that would just be because He helped me to do it. Or
When did that happen, Whitney?
personally, it was about 10 years ago. I
Okay.
grew up it's a long story, but I grew up in church, and then just a family that He allowed my wife and I to meet at that time, a part of another church, just really opened our eyes to, we'd been playing church all our life, but we could tell there was something different about these people. And ultimately they took us in, and, they were having meals with us in their home, and just time after time, and just watching how they just lived by faith in a big way. They were just very open and shared lots with us. And we were like, wait a minute, this is very different than what I thought Christianity was,
Hmm.
but anyway, the Lord used them to save my wife Anna, and it's been an amazing friendship. But they've been mentors as well, and just like Joe, but in a very different way, and more important, I would say by far. But yeah, so about 10 years ago, and it's been amazing ever
So
since.
what was life like before that experience versus after? I mean, give me more. I want to dive deep.
Every redemption story is just amazing. Just we are running from the Lord. We're wanting to be our own God. We're wanting to go do our own thing, thinking that we are in control, and that's all of us ultimately. But just that the Lord would humble Himself and reach down and turn us around, and pull us back to Him and make a way for us to be with Him forever by dying on the cross is just incredible. Right. And that's something I just didn't understand that before that. I think I played the game. I knew it was like the right thing to do, the good thing to be at church on Sundays. Right. I grew up that way, but that wasn't who I was. I didn't have that relationship with the Lord. I didn't understand truly how much He cared for me and what He did, for me on the cross. And so, after that, I just think it changes. It changes everything, and it should. A pastor, I heard him talking one time, and he said, coming to know the Lord is like getting hit by a Mack truck. Like you're going to look different. you know you're going to look different when this happens, and but it should change every interaction that you have. And am I perfect? Well, by goodness, no, by no means, but it just means that now I know how much I actually need a Savior, and how much I need Jesus in my life. And so it just means I know how much I need the hospital now. I'm not just blind to it as I was. So everything's changed. Our whole mission, instead of wanting just extreme wealth, well, now we're very focused on giving a big chunk away, and helping other families in the adoption process. And none of that would happen if it wasn't for the Lord. Our children wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Lord, and us giving us the desire to want to do that, and so many things through those processes that He just made Himself so known that it could not have happened if He just wasn't in complete control of it. So I would say everything's changed.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I believe the stronger your connection is with God, the stronger your ability to perform, self-realize, to become a better businessman, a better human being, better spiritually, better in a lot of ways. And all that starts with your connection to God and what you can do to strengthen that relationship. And that can mean so many different things for so many people. But I think inside everybody knows, whether they're connected or not, and what they should do to get more connected, or what they should stop doing to become more connected. Anyways, very cool, man. So I want to go into a lot of things. Definitely want to hear more about your military stuff, but let's dive into some real estate stuff. So tell me about when you got started in real estate, how that, evolved into multifamily syndication. I don't think that you started in apartments, right?
I did not.
Okay, so tell me about that story, and maybe we can stop somewhere, maybe at your first multifamily syndication. I want to hear particularly about the capital raise and the mindset that you had and the experiences that you had with that.
Yes, for sure. So I started in 2009, and that's when we bought a couple triplexes at that time. And that, that's also, I was still a police officer at that time, had the income issue, right? Was looking for some way to supplement our income. But I never imagined like leaving the state police at that time. I thought that's what I loved, working the road. I loved being in uniform, the structure, the discipline, all those things. But finally, it hit me that this is difficult. Like, it's going to be difficult for us to make a living or support our family, and working every night, weekend, and holiday for $40,000 a year or less with no room for advancement. Like, what future do I see here? And for our family as well. Other guys that I was working with had been divorced 1, 2 times, whatever. And, I just like, okay, this is not what's best. I've got to figure something else out. But at that time, I bought 2 triplexes. I think I'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, something like that. But my eyes were open to this, just the possibility of real estate and the wealth that can be created there. My mind was also open to so many others then who had done it. So I'm like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah.
Right. If they can do it, I can do it too. Like, and it's not just one person that done it or 2 or 3 people. It's, all kinds of people, that have made wealth in real estate. So I was like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too. Let's go figure out how to do it. Right. So at that time though, still in the police force, bought 2 triplexes, made a bunch of mistakes. I would say, didn't do proper due diligence, trusted the realtor and the seller too much. I could go on and on, or also self-managing, made tons of mistakes, but learned a lot. It was our own university, that's for sure. And just, we were remodeling a house at the same time. It was our first year of marriage. If you can imagine the stress, of all that happening. But we had those units, but then we quickly moved to Virginia for the federal agent position. And so I sold those units not long after were in Virginia. And then we continued to buy smaller multis, or up to like a 15 unit in Virginia. But that was as big as I could see, at the time, because I'd always been, up to that point, I'd always thought, okay, you buy a single family or a duplex or a few of those, and then finally you get a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. I had no idea that I could buy a 100-unit complex or 200 unit. It just wasn't in my vocabulary or thought process at all.
I would say for most people, it's not.
Right. I just want to like blow that myth that you don't have to start with single family. You don't have to. And I was part of a small meetup here in Roanoke for a long time. And when, I was there for a while and got to know everybody in there to single family, mostly maybe a duplex or something. And so when I started talking about, no, I'm going to transition to, I really want to build this brand and this business and scale in this way. And I think we can buy large multifamily properties. And, the biggest thing was, wait a minute, Whitney, like that, wait a minute, because most people start with a single family and a duplex, and then you kind of grow, build up to something like that. But you have to remember, like, all these people, they've been very successful with single family. Some of them have many, 100 homes, and so, but that's their focus. That's what's, on their mind. Okay. So, and I wasn't thinking then, okay, is this person, where I want to be? They did have good intentions. I think they really had my best interest in mind, by sharing that. However, that wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it did make me think about it. I know this person cares about me, right? But I still knew it was possible. And then I started to meet more people then who, I'd only been in the business, so we'll say the syndication business, a year or two, and we're already buying 100, 200 unit properties. I'm like, okay, there you go again. If they can do it, guess what? I can do it too.
Yeah, that's a big core belief system for me. When I see somebody who's, killing it in whatever thing that I'm interested in, if they can do it, I believe I can figure out a way to do it. So I like that. Okay, so
the cool part is that you don't always have to figure it out. Like, if somebody else has already done it.
Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel by any means. Right. All right, so then you move into syndication. Tell me about your first deal.
Yeah. So first deal, I partnered on a couple deals, to raising capital. You wanted to get into that. And so, I was raising capital before I ever closed on my first deal. Right. And so I was, I would tell all the listeners, like, you are always raising capital. If you're in this business, it doesn't matter where you're at, who you're talking to. It just doesn't matter. You are always raising capital. You're always marketing yourself. No matter how you're presenting yourself, you're always doing it. And so, whether good or bad, you're always marketing. So I would back up to say, I started building a brand, and I even created the real estate syndication show before I ever done a syndication. People just are like, wait a minute, what? That just doesn't make any sense. But We did. Anyway, that opened tons of doors, right? When we've done over 550 interviews now, and with all the experts in the industry, right? I mean, I just interviewed Garrett Sutton a few minutes ago. If you don't know him, he's a Rich Dad advisor, and just an amazing show. And so connecting with people like that, has been amazing, right? And getting to ask all the questions that I have, whether it's from operations or financing or whatever, I've had those people on the show. And so we started doing that, but then also I started going to every networking event I could possibly afford to go to. I mean, all over the country. And
Mm-hmm.
I am just networking as much as I possibly can. I'm not really inside the event as much as I am like out in the lobby. And but it's more about a genuine relationship. I say that to say I'm hustling. I am meeting as many people as I possibly
Yeah.
can. But if this person wants to stand here and talk to me for 20 minutes or an hour, I'm okay with that. Okay. Like I'm going to stand there and I want to interact and I
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to remember, that about them, whatever that was. And so that was crucial, at that time, just all those relationships, all those community, all those conversations, that we really take for granted. It's not just blasting your card out there, but ultimately our mission and our why, I think the Lord really just is showing himself in this way as well, because our mission and our why, I think, really helps set us apart. In those conversations, I didn't plan it this way, but I've seen it start to happen, is where when I'm having these conversations with potential investors, I'm sharing with them about our adoption story and how we want to help families in adoption and how our investors are playing a role in that. And they remember that, and you have to remember that if you're at an event with 200 people or 1,000 people, and
Mm-hmm.
these people are talking to people just back to back to back to back all day long, and you call them up a week later and you're saying, "Hey, John, I talked to you last week," and he's like, "Who in the world are you?" I mean, just it's hard to remember, right?
Yeah.
But if there's something like that that sets you apart, that's going to help in a big way, and that helped me. And so I was able to raise capital for the first deal and the second deal. And I don't know if we'll do this on the next deal, but I've doubled the amount of capital that I could raise every deal. Okay.
That's
And
awesome.
so, yeah. And so, I mean, I didn't think about that for a while, but when I started looking at it, I'm like, okay, this is working.
Yeah, raising capital can definitely be intimidating, especially if you're not outward focused and if you're thinking about, how can I grow versus, how can I help somebody solve their problems, then that becomes a mental roadblock for you because you don't know if you're doing the right thing. But raising capital, you shouldn't be afraid to do it because you're helping people with opportunity. You're giving them an opportunity to step into an asset class that they may not have even known that was available to them and create generational wealth for them and their families. So I love that about raising capital. It's a very exciting thing for me.
Right.
Do you think that you're more on the capital raising side, marketing side, or more on the business, underwriting, acquiring deals side, or is it a combination of both?
I'm definitely more on the marketing and capital raising side of our business or our structure. I have a business partner that's more focused on the numbers. I call him my walking calculator.
Are you talking about
I mean,
Sam?
yeah, that's Sam. You should have him on as well. But
I'll reach out to him for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I mean, just an amazing guy, an amazing partner, business partner, not with numbers and just all together, but just an amazing guy. But yeah, do I still do some underwriting? Do we still talk about it? Of course, but it's not my main focus anymore. Now that we can assign these roles or duties a little bit, it helps us to get better and be more efficient. So yeah, I'm definitely more on the capital raising, investor relations, communication, all that stuff.
Okay, a couple things. I don't necessarily want to recap, but I wanted to touch on one thing, which was when you were selecting a mentor. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't ever want to spend any money on it." But I wanted to mention this conceptually, this American public or maybe even the world general population thought processes. It's okay for me because of social pressure to go out and spend $100,000 or more on a school degree, and nobody will ever think twice about it. Like, hey,
And finance it for
congratulations.
30,
Yeah.
40 years.
But when somebody approaches you or when you find out that there's an opportunity to get a coach or a mentor that can actually give you the path to becoming financially free, then there's a lot more trepidation and a lot more fear around, oh, what is my family going to think? Or all, what is the social, how they're going to consider me if I spend $40,000, $50,000 on a coach or on something that, is risky or unproven. But you don't think twice about spending 100 grand on a degree that you're never going to use to help you create financial success in your life. So I wanted to throw that out there, like conceptualize that if you're actually going to step into this business.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask yourself the cost to success. I couldn't put a value on my time with Joe or other coaches, but just look at people that are where you want to be. And when you can talk to some of them, ask them, how many mentors have you had?
Yeah.
You know,
Mentors is a
I mean,
big deal.
everybody that's successful or in real estate or anything, any business, majority of them, I won't say all, but majority of them have numerous mentors and understand the value.
I wanted to mention this concept of giving yourself the authority to do something. You started a podcast in a space even before your own syndication. So what gives you the right to start a podcast or write a book or do something where you don't have the authority? And this conceptually, I think, is a place where people can develop a lot of strength if they give themselves permission to do something that they don't have any knowledge about. Like for myself, like I started the Capital Raiser show, and I'm not a successful capital raise. Yeah, I've raised a little over $500,000, about 625,000, somewhere in that range. But for me to consider myself a capital raiser when there's people that have raised billions or millions and millions of dollars, what gives me the right? Well, I have to give myself that right. And I think as a result, you give yourself the opportunity to provide a lot of value, which is what you're doing for your audience. Speaking of which, I would highly recommend going on to the Real Estate Syndication show and leaving Whitney a 5-star rating. And while you're at it, leave me one or a written review, please. It helps us get great guests like Whitney to come on. Quick shout out to Bakerson, my multifamily firm. They provide me with a studio. Tell me a little bit about this process that you went through where you gave yourself the authority to launch a podcast in a space where you had no business being there.
So first, I would like to debunk what you just said, like no space to be there or no authority to be there. I would say I'm not, especially initially, I wasn't, it wasn't just me talking, sharing with how you should do multifamily syndication. Right. And ultimately I had, history in real estate, but not large multifamily, properties at that time. An interview show like this, you're asking the experts things, right? You're pulling out that information. And so you are providing value. And so, I would say, people that are thinking, well, I can't start a podcast because I've never done it before. Well, when are you going to get there? You got to get started, and it's getting past that fear. Like if there's not a little fear or a little failure somewhere, like you're probably not growing.
Boom. And love that.
So where are you going? Where are you going to get to if you're not pushing yourself and you're not feeling a little uncomfortable? I mean, I was just asking questions, right, of all the experts. And so creating a professional brand, creating a professional podcast. It's worked very well.
Okay, cool. Tell me about podcasting. How, who do you use as a hosting service? What do you do to brand? Anything that separates you? Any secrets? Anything that you've learned? Tell me about the things that you do to create a successful podcast.
Yeah. So doing a daily show, I had to have a team from the beginning. Absolutely. And I knew that. Right. And so if I was doing a weekly show, here's what I expect would have happened is that I would have tried to do it all myself. I would have tried to do the editing, and I would have gotten behind. I would have gotten frustrated. Finally, I probably would have quit. Right. Like so many, there's a statistic on that as well. And I can't remember what it is, but majority of podcasts don't get past like 5 or 10 episodes, before they quit. And so, I knew that if I was going to be successful, especially doing a daily show, and I think that's one perk or blessing in disguise, really, of doing a daily is like, I just knew that from the beginning. There's no way I can do those things. I've got to build a team. I used 4 VAs from all over the world, plus a virtual assistant that was local, that was more like an executive assistant that helped me manage all those other people.
Nice.
Right. And so each of those people had a different role. One may be editing audio, one's editing video and helping with some social media, another one's doing show notes and different things like that. So I had to set those roles out. And then we have a shared sheet, just that helps, like a task management system that we created ourselves. So we can manage, who's done with what. But that system has changed now. We did about 170 to 200 shows that way. And then I actually hired a production team, to help me really take that side off my plate. While we got it rolling, obviously started doing deals, my time is more valuable, somewhere else. Right. And so I still have an amazing executive assistant that helps me manage a lot of that. But even now, her time is not as much as spent on that. I even have somebody else now that helps find guests and things like that. But another group that really does all the production after the interview. And that's what I want. Like, I want as hands off as I can possibly get. Pretty much after I do the interview, I mean, I don't do anything before the interview as far as for the show, hardly, or email here and there. But then everything afterwards is done by somebody else. And that's where I wanted to get it to, even in the beginning. But we've changed that process and that team a little bit. We used Libsyn in the beginning for hosting, I think you'd ask. And now we use Buzzsprout. So we've changed that, a little bit.
Why did you switch?
Ultimately, the group that I first went with to produce the show had their own hosting platform. I won't mention who they are, but sure. I was not very pleased, and we switched again. So I switched to their hosting platform, which was not the best decision. But then when I switched to another group, I switched to Buzzsprout at that time to have a different hosting platform, outside of their group.
What do you like about Buzzsprout that Libsyn, between those two? And feel free to talk about it. There's videos on YouTube about this. I'm just curious because I use Libsyn.
Yeah, so I would say if you're on Libsyn, then it's probably fine to stay there. Libsyn was great. I had no issues. But one thing that I did really like, and I think Libsyn has this capability, but it's not as user-friendly, or wasn't at the time, it's where you can put ads in at any time. The name has left my mind.
No, that's fine. I think I get it.
But even post the show. So like I can go back and put an ad in, back on the show in March of 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that on Libsyn now. I know that for a fact.
Great. So that is very valuable. So your ads can be relevant to what's happening right now, because what most people don't realize is that a lot of people go back and listen to shows that you produced a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're advertising, you're promoting something that happened a month later, which is irrelevant now. But if you could have an ad in there that was relevant now, that's even going to catch their attention more, because they're like, what did he say? Because they know they're listening to something that's a year old. That's a very valuable thing, though, to be able to do that. That's the biggest reason we're on.
I was thinking about switching to SoundCloud. Just last night I was researching it, and it said video that I watched, and I'm not saying to do it or not to do it. I'm just saying the video that I watched said that the nice thing about Libsyn is that you can go back and without losing the traffic, you can upload an entirely new episode or edited episode or change the parts of it, and then without losing any of the traffic or the statistics that came with that show. So I really was like, okay, I'm not leaving Libsyn. No, that's not
yeah, and that's great. One of the big things I lost was statistics about how many downloads and all the, live downloads, which I hate, but oh well.
Tell me, like, how many, do you mind sharing statistics about like where you listen to, how many downloads you get? I'm not too sure. I'm trying to figure out like how fast am I growing. It feels like I'm on an upward trajectory, but I don't have anything to compare myself to. Like
what's your downloads right now?
Right now, total, I have about 7,500 downloads, and I'm growing. So probably by about 20%, maybe 30% a month. And I'm not sure.
How many shows?
So I've done 54 shows. I have another 15 recorded. So I'm like right at about 100 episodes. I want to write a book on everything that I've learned and then share that. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to look or work, but that's something I'm starting to plant the seed for.
It's a slow ball, right? Or it's a snowball. It takes a while, or it's that locomotion, that train, that you're pushing, right? It takes forever. And that's what this has felt like for me for a long time, is I am pushing a train, trying to get it started, but we're rolling now, and so it's a lot easier. But building that team was crucial. We had 60 shows recorded before we ever launched.
Wow.
And so, because I knew there would be hiccups, right? It's a new thing, and we got a team from all over the world, and I wanted to plan for there to be problems, right? And so we still had time to catch up, before we ran out of shows. Obviously, doing it daily. But as far as your download question, I can't remember initially. I mean, we do track all that. I could go back and look, but we track it, like weekly, like what are our downloads, and we'll track like what was the most popular shows. Sometimes I want to know like what was the topic that we discussed on that show, or who was the guest? What was it that got people to us, to the website or whatever. But, right now we're pushing about 1,500 per show downloads. So we'll average about 60,000 or more per month. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. It varies, between, I'll say 60 and 75 downloads a month.
Yeah, I think one of the keys or one of the potential keys to growing a successful podcast is, or anything regarding to market, is consistently producing content. It's more important to consistently produce than it is what the content actually is. At least I've heard that from a variety of places.
Right.
Okay, so let's jump into. I have a lightning round. I didn't set you up or tell you about it, but essentially, I'm going to ask you some questions, put some music in the background, try and keep your answers a little short, but let's go ahead and get started.
You said this was just going to be a conversation.
Yeah, well, I do have a lightning round, so it's fun, believe me. I'm not sure if you'll have fun, but I'm pretty sure you will. Okay, tell me, what was your favorite military experience?
I would say boot camp. Probably some of the obstacle courses was my favorite. Being overseas was not fun, but some of the boot camp stuff.
Okay, how many guns do you own, and what's your favorite one?
How many? Probably, including pistols, 10 or 12. My favorite's probably going to be my 22 Magnum lever action. However, if I'm packing, it's going to be a Glock 27 40 caliber, because that's what I carried on my ankle for years as a cop, and so now I carry that.
Very cool. And then your favorite personal development course or book?
Let me give you a list of books.
We were talking about it before the show. Just give me one that stands out.
There's so many great ones.
I know.
And I would say, and if I have to pick one.
Yeah, you got to tell me one.
Oh, man, I mean, I'm looking at so many. I really like Malcolm Gladwell. And I say that to kind of say a lot of books. But if I have to pick one, initially one of his first ones that I listened to was Blink.
Okay.
And I say that to say there's so many other good ones, but to help you to think faster and to realize that sometimes your first thought is the right answer. Mm-hmm. And if you really think about how long it takes to make decisions, like it's a bad thing. If you can get to where you can make decisions really fast, you'll start to move much faster in your business as well. Even if it's the wrong decision, you're still normally going to be better off. There's usually not that many decisions that even if you make the wrong one, it's going to like completely derail you.
Trust your intuition, guys. Okay, cool. Next question. Favorite, actually scariest moment of your life?
Oh, goodness. Definitely a time when I'm overseas, no doubt about it.
Okay, favorite childhood memory?
These are good questions. Probably riding my first horse.
Nice. And then best vacation you ever took?
It was before kids. Hadn't been married very long. We went to this place in Florida called the Red Bar, and they just had great music, and my wife and I just had a great time. We still talk about it.
Awesome. And then favorite thing about having adopted children?
Seeing the adoption story, just how Christ adopted me, through them. How much the Lord has taught us just through them and through just the whole adoption process has been amazing.
Okay, and then your favorite horse that you ever had?
His name was Sun, and I say Sun because he was just an amazing animal. I could leave him out for 6 months and get him up and set my 2-year-old up on his back, and he was just amazing.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. Thanks for doing that. I love the lightning round, man. I had a lot of fun with that. All right, cool, man. So before we kind of skipped over a little bit, we were talking about your first syndication, and tell me how big was it?
So the first property that I partnered on, I partnered with somebody. Obviously my main role was raising capital. It was 415 units, but obviously I didn't have to raise all of that. Right. The first few deals that my business partner and I did together were a 180 unit and a 216 unit.
Those were syndications? Or
they were.
Ventures?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. And then why don't I have 2 more questions for you. I want to know what your why is, and then we'll talk a little bit about, we'd mentioned at the beginning of the show, what kind of things that you instill your children with in terms of values and education and mindset.
Yeah, our appreciate you asking as well, Ruben. But our why is helping other families with this expense of adoption. And so there's so many great families who would be, just great parents. And there's 160 million orphans in the world. So most people have no idea that it's almost half the size of the U.S. population. And these kids are dying of things like diarrhea that we can cure with $1. Simple things that we so take for granted. But that process of getting them home to that family is so frustrating, honestly, that it's so difficult. However, it's still part of it. We still have to go through it. We're still going to get it done. It's not the child's fault, but it can also cost 40 to 60 grand to get the child home. And people say, what? Why is it so expensive? Well, there are legal things that have to happen, obviously, to make sure that we do it legally and properly, all those things. But the problem too is that so many families would be great parents. But the first thing they say to me is when they're asking me about adoption is, well, Whitney, that's more than we make in a year. There's no way that we can do that. And so they just quit right there. So that's where LifeBridge Capital is creating a nonprofit where we can help, we can come along beside those people and say, if you are willing to commit, to bringing this child home, to adoption, we want to help you with the financial expense of that as well. And so that's our big why. That's how our investors get to play a big role in just a bigger thing, other than making, building wealth and having a fancy house or car. They can really know that it doesn't affect their returns at all, but they're still helping us to provide this need for all these families that want to bring a child home through adoption.
I love that. That's so cool. I really love that. I think there was a show that you did with Tyler Chester on purpose-driven business. I think I would go check that one out. I really like that. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the things that you are teaching your children, because I'm very curious about this particular topic. What are you doing to set them up to become, or do you want them to be entrepreneurs? Do you have any energy on that at all? Do you care what they do? What kind of things do you teach them? I know you homeschool, and tell me everything about it.
Okay, so of course we want them to be entrepreneurs. If they want to be, they don't have to be. If they want to be a fireman, I want them to go be the best fireman they can be. And so I would even back up to say it's that mentality I want to instill, more so than just being an entrepreneur, right? That we're created to work. And it still goes back to Christ and teaching them about the Lord, and how that changes everything that they do if they know the Lord. It changes everything. It doesn't matter if they're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if they're a teacher. It doesn't matter if they're the trash man. I want them to just have the desire and the integrity to do the best thing, the best job that they can. If it's the trash guy, if it's a bus driver, I don't care. If it's painting, like, do it the best that you can, and just know that you are honoring the Lord in all these details, even if nobody's watching. Like, the Lord still knows.
Yeah.
And, and so that's what we're instilling every day. And I would also go as far as say, like, that's the main reason why we homeschool. And so it's my job as the parent, where I'm instructed biblically to care for my children and to teach them the ways of the Lord. And that, my wife and I believe that 100%. It's not the government's job. It's not the teacher's job. However, and I will say that I have nothing against people that put their kid in school. I mean, that most people have no option but to do that. And that's what you got to do, right? I'm not downing anybody that has to do that. I'm just saying we just decided that if it meant less house, if it meant even renting, it's that important to us to be able to homeschool our kids and be able to teach them truth. And because that one thing about them knowing the Lord is the most important thing in their life. But then while we're on this earth, it's going to change everything else that they do, and their desire behind, whether they're an entrepreneur or a trash man, all these. I'm not going to have to teach them to pick up trash. If I can teach them the desire to serve the Lord, and that's something that only comes from Him as well. But they can learn so much of that from just being with us. From, my boys now are learning so much. It's amazing what they're learning. So we're very intentional about those things, and teaching them. And so, when I go and have meetings, I like to take one of my boys with me, even though they're just 5 and 6. They learn a lot. It's amazing how much they learn. When they were like 3 and 4, and my wife would be in the grocery store, we would all go, and I'll walk up and down in front of the strip mall with the boys, and I'm training them to greet people, right? There's all kinds of people there used to be, right? Walking up and down. And so, we would say, okay, here comes a lady. How do we greet her? We're probably may not shake her hand in that scenario, but in other scenarios, we're going to instill those traits, and being kind and being respectful. And this is how we greet people. It's just simple things like making eye contact and sticking your hand out to shake somebody's hand.
Yeah, I love
kids
that.
have to be taught those things, right? My mom did an amazing job teaching me, to be a gentleman. I wouldn't say I've mastered it by no means. However, she did put some effort there, and it went a long ways. And I just see so many kids that just don't get the training, to do just simple things. And so I want my boys to know how to honor their wife and their children and their church and their, all these things, but they're going to first see it by how I do it. Right. And to answer your other point, second to obviously the Bible, my boys, they still have their own reading time in the morning where, we're just instilling those habits, right? Where they're reading the Word. And my oldest is 6, and he's reading pretty well, believe it or not. And he'll read stories, and we'll talk about it. It's amazing what he remembers and what he knows. It's just incredible what they've memorized. But a couple books I would say outside of Christianity, that have been really fun for our family. And I would highly recommend, and you can find it on my website, but it's Who Moved My Cheese for Children.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. Who Moved My Cheese is a great book about mindset and all those things, but there's one just for children. It's pretty much the same story, but it helps them visually to see those mice and, the little men going through
Love
the
it.
maze. And I've read that book to them, I'll read it in one sitting, just straight through, and they are so into it, and they don't get tired of it. And another book is 7 Habits of either Highly Effective Children or Happy Kids. And if you look up 7 Habits of Happy Kids or something like that, it's going to come up. But another just book of great stories, great lessons to talk about.
Very cool. I love it. Yeah, I just listened to that audio on the way to go snowboarding about a month ago. It's great. It's been a long time since I heard it. Okay, so tell the audience how to get a hold of you.
Go to lifebridgecapital.com. Obviously, you can reach me at whitney@lifebridgecapital.com through email. You can call or text 540-585-4338.
I had a blast on this show. It went by so fast. Thank you so much. I know you have a hard stop, so thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ruben. My pleasure. Pleasure to get to know you as well.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, take care.
If they can do it, I can do it too.